Trump, Putin and Ukraine. What's the policy of the United States towards the war? Beyond the electoral rhetoric, that is. Stopping the war within one day? Or are we back to the days of great power carve-ups? So, what can Ukraine expect? Join me, Jan Darash, for How We Got Here.
The fall of the wall and the fall of the Soviet Empire created the right momentum for the Ukrainian nation, long pursuing independence, sovereignty and self-determination to make its dreams come true. The early weeks and months of the nation-state were bumpy. No cash, just coupons and a lot of unfinished business with Russia. The heir of Ukraine's former Soviet overlords, Kyiv, had to take a step back to make 2 steps forward. Ukraine signed a trilateral statement with the United States and Russia in January 1994 on the dismantling of nuclear systems in Ukraine. And later that December, Kyiv signed the Budapest Memorandum and acceded to the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, committing itself to removing all nuclear weapons from its soil. In return, Ukraine received security guarantees barring Russia from threatening or using military force or economic coercion against it, except in self-defense or otherwise in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. Ukraine duly gave up its nuclear arsenal, a move that some Ukrainians would come to bitterly regret in the future. Relations between Washington and Kyiv soured in 2002 under the Republican administration of George W. Bush. Against the backdrop of Washington's concerns about Iraq's potential nuclear ramp-up and President Leonid Kuchma's July 2000 decision to transfer a Kolhuga early warning system to Iraq. Still, under the same Bush administration, pro-democratic ambitions sparked by Ukraine's 2004 Orange Revolution led to a rebound in cooperation and more open dialogue between Ukraine and the United States. Unfolding in the middle of Democratic President Barack Obama's second term in office, the 2014 Revolution of Dignity, fueled by the same longing for fairer, more democratic and prosperous society, brought the US and Ukraine even closer. Washington would provide Kyiv with $1.5 billion in military aid from 2014 to 2019 to help it keep Russian-backed separatists at bay. While Joe Biden's Democratic administration has sent over $50 billion in military aid to Ukraine since the beginning of the Russian invasion, it remains uncertain whether Donald Trump's White House will stay the course.
Good morning.
Now, the Biden administration is rushing to get the final $6 billion in assistance to Ukraine before Trump returns to the White House.
I'm delighted to be joined today by Yevgenia Kravchuk, a Ukrainian Member of Parliament and the Deputy Chair of the Ukrainian Committee on Humanitarian and Information Policy. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me.
We talked earlier about your experiences. You've just come back from the United States.
Correct.
New election, obviously. Can you give us your evaluation of what this means for Ukraine? It's early days still. We're still unsure about all the ramifications of the new president, but what was the reflections that you took back from the United States?
I was part of observation mission, international observation mission in the United States. First, what I saw, there were some, I think from Russian side, there were some expectations that United States will be in chaos after these elections with possible, manifestations, or if, one candidate will not agree with the results. But actually, Trump's victory is a landsliding victory. So it's obviously that he won in all of the swing states. Of course, still the House of Representatives is being counted, the last constituencies. But it looks like that Republicans will have not just a majority in the Senate, but also they will keep the majority in House of Commons. So basically, it's the red wave in the states. Situation is controlled, and the new administration is being shaped and formed. So, of course, Ukraine was ready to work with any of the administrations because it's a choice of American people. And even before that, we've been working with both of the Democrats and Republicans. Exactly, because we need the bipartisan support to have it as stable, and we do have a lot of friends of Ukraine and people who understand what possible victory of Putin would mean to the world and the international world order. In both parties, among Republicans as well, you would have a lot of House of Commons, House of Representatives. Chairs of the committees, especially those on the military side, that would be criticizing the Biden's administration for not giving enough or for not deciding on the long range or something like that. So now, of course, we would need to see the official position of Trump and administration with the details, because so far, before the elections, Trump was saying about this 24 hours,
electoral rhetoric.
Exactly. So after he will come to the White House, and especially when we see the key people in his team in Department of State, in Department of Defense, who would be the national security advisor, we can then understand, because so far no official comments were there. There was a good conversation between Trump and President Zelensky and President-elect Trump. It was a good conversation, and I think President Zelensky is sending a very clear signals, saying that, okay, Trump pictures himself and says he's a strong leader of a strong country, of the country that is, leader of the free world. So the strong leader cannot just, let Putin has what he wants.
Yes, you mentioned that the mandate that he has makes him stronger rather than concessionary to Putin.
Exactly, and he would be heavily criticized by Democrats, for example, if he would be, trying to not to hold a strong position. But we are sure that he would not want to look as the weak leader. And if you turn back to his first term, he was actually the president who gave the permission for the first time to sell lethal weapons to Ukraine. Basically, javelins were shipped to Ukraine. When President Trump was in office, it wasn't the case when Obama was president of the country. This permission wasn't given. So, of course, it's, from the one side, people in Ukraine were worried by some, statements, these rhetorics. But again, it's also the window for opportunities for some strong decisions. But of course, these coming months, I would say, would be critical, because Russia would be trying to push very hard on the front to occupy more territories, to push out the Ukrainian forces from Kursk region,
there's a Russian territory, which is exactly the same thing. You have to hold that particular territory. They have to push
exactly, because they they withdrew some forces from Donetsk region to regain control in Kursk. Another thing, Ukraine for sure will be investing more in our own military production, because now we are producing long-range missiles of our own production and drones that are actually long range. And just a few days ago, there was the biggest drone attack on Moscow in these years of full-scale invasion. Can you imagine that in early 2022, when the world was expecting that Ukraine will fall in 2 weeks? So it's not going to be easy, but for Ukraine, it's important to have the stronger position if possible negotiations will start in 2020.
How would Ukraine fit into the negotiations? For example, we have this great power history of just great powers restructuring the world. Poland was the same. threw Poland under a bus in 1944-45, despite going to war for it immediately. Is that what a great fear of Ukraine, that what leverage do you have over the new President Trump? You don't have any, obviously, over President Putin. He's not willing to negotiate. What's the Ukrainian strategy, in these tripartite negotiations?
For sure, Ukrainian people want some security guarantees. Of course, joining NATO is the best security guarantees for the country with such borders, I would say, because Russia is not going anywhere in any case, and it will be very naive to think that after Putin there will be a democratic leader and everyone will live happily ever after. So we need these security guarantees, and that's why President Zelensky openly presented these 5 points victory plan, saying, okay, so of course, we understand that joining NATO might take years, as joining EU, it takes years. But invitation to NATO would send to Putin a strong signal saying that Ukraine will never be a gray zone. Because if not, for Russia will use the time in maybe 5, 7, 8 years, regroup, produce even more weapons, and come back because the ultimate goal is to have this imperialistic way of thinking that having a vessel and occupy even more territories. Of course, we will invest, as I said, in our own military production, but we would need the steady and the long-term planning military support from other countries, together with United States. Israel has the military support in each budget of United States for years and years.
The idea of Ukraine joining NATO seems to be a far-reaching conclusion. It seems to, as you say, it seems to be a proposition that will drag on for decades. Is that part of the American strategy, to keep Ukraine waiting in the waiting room always for NATO?
Well, they would have to say it openly, because before that, the official position of all the countries that the doors of NATO are open for all the countries who want to join. And actually, it would be a sort of, giving Putin what he wants, to have this gray zone in Europe. And again, coming back to these 5 points that President Zelensky presented, he also gave a clear signal to Trump even then, saying that, okay, Ukraine can be a donor to European security. Because Trump was always saying, it's bad to have our troops, American troops, overseas, and stuff like that. So actually, Ukraine is proposing after the war to use Ukrainian very well-trained military, probably the most trained in combat military on the European continent, to be deployed in other countries, maybe in Baltic states, for example, or other countries.
What about the territorial concessions that Ukraine will probably be forced to comply to? I mean, can it prolong a maximalist strategy of regaining all the territory that were secured in the Budapest Agreement of 1996?
Well, first of all, no Ukrainian politician, neither Zelensky or any of the opposition leaders, would never ever say that the territory or people on these territories could be part of these concessions. We do understand that not all of the territories can be returned in a military way. But other than that, we cannot just say, yes, we forget about occupied territories, we forget about these people who are somewhere in prisons or being tortured because they simply do not agree with this annexation or, with this occupation. So we do understand that there is room for diplomacy, but this diplomacy has to be, this peace through strength. You cannot just, give to aggressor whatever he wants, because other aggressors, possible aggressors, are watching. And they are actually making their alliance official. So Putin is signing an agreement with North Korea. North Koreans are on European continent, official army of another state is in European continent.
A final question to you. You've had international security guarantees before Budapest. What makes the ones that you place your trust in any more secure than the previous ones?
Well, first of all, of course, Ukrainians will never agree of giving up weapons.
It's not necessarily that you're naive. It's the question of great powers are just great powers.
I understand, but Ukrainians totally will not ever agree with, making our military weaker, or what Russians want to, have a small army, no long-range weapons. No, we need to secure our country. Of course, there was a big fuss about President Zelensky, saying that, okay, we gave up nuclear weapons. What choices do we have on the? So, Ukraine's official position is, of course, that we're not developing back the nukes. But if we don't have that, what we have instead. Yes. So it could be some sort of other weapons, long range, that are deployed on Ukrainian territory. So it would be most painful for Russia to attack again. And of course, we'll be investing in our defense, military technology production. Actually, Ukraine, I think, the sort of part of our economy for decades, many years, Miltech will be as in Israel.
Yes. I mean, Yevgenia Kravchuk, thank you very much. You obviously have a very well-seasoned military machine, so that should be a warning for us all. Thank you very much for coming on to our programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's all we have time for today. Do join us next time for How We Got Here.